So hey everyone. Well, as far as how things are going, there are some concerning bills that are or were up for a vote in the Texas legislature this week. I don't really know how it went so far. I haven't had a chance to look it up yet. But it's concerning. If it passed, it's a problem. If it didn't, then thank goodness. But it's still not great. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that really just frustrates me about this current political climate because they're legislating so many things against trans people that really just don't need to be legislated. I mean, it's just kind of like there's so many issues that it's just if it's something that you or your family decides that you need to do, then that's one thing, but there's no real need for the government to be involved in any of this. Um, you know, like uh, like trans healthcare for younger people, and I mean, I would have loved if I had known about transness earlier. I didn't. Back then, I don't think it was even common knowledge, and I don't really blame my parents for not, filling me in or knowing about it or whatnot because it just wasn't something that was really commonly discussed back then. And I mean, it's one of those things that, I mean, I can see signs, particularly now when I think about my past, that I really, had been trans for a long time. It just took me 4 decades to kind of glue into it, or almost 4 decades. But, it's the kind of thing, I read in Nana Visitor's book, about Melissa Navia, who plays Ortegas on Strange New Worlds. And she said that in her interview that her family had never really tried to put her in a box, that had never really corrected her when she did something that would be considered traditionally like male gendered. And it's like when she was her dad taught her how to tie ties, if I remember correctly, something of that nature. And it was just kind of like that's how families should be. That's how I kind of think all families should be. They told her, her entire family told her, whoever you're going to be, we will back you. And I kind of think that that's the definition of family, that that's what families should do, that that's what all families should do. It's like I understand that, we all have our own individual values. We all have things that we want to purport to the next generation, or I don't know if that's the right word to use, but, things we want to pass on. And, it's just one of those things that ultimately I suppose we all have to realize that we don't really have a lot of control over these things. People sometimes try and force things in a certain direction or guide things in a certain direction depending on how you approach it. But at the end of the day, people are going to be who they're going to be, regardless of what influence we do or do not have. Now, if you do your job well, then they'll, still, be happy, healthy, and in contact with you. And if not, things may go a different direction. But I mean, I think that really the best way to be is to be encouraging, to be protective and not overprotective, and just kind of just let them find their own way as much as possible. And I don't know. It's like I know I don't speak from direct experience as a parent, but I'm just speaking just from observation and just from what I would personally have, what I would like to have done, what I would have done if I were. And it's just one of these things that it's like I mean, they're making all of these efforts to make laws against things that are not a problem, that were not a problem. We've had some trans healthcare in Texas for several years. That was never an issue, and it really impressed me that Texas had at the time. It's like I was very impressed because I thought that it wouldn't be the kind of thing that Texas would permit, and yet it was. Yet it was something I was able to do in Texas, which very very much impressed me. So it's like at the time I was major props to the state, but then with the current political climate, things seem to be all of a sudden it's all a problem, and it's just like it shouldn't be. It isn't, and it never was. And it's frustrating now because, like I said, all that confidence that I had that my state could rise above the bullshit is rapidly deteriorating, and it's just one of those things that maybe Texans as a whole don't care about what I think about my state. Maybe certain individuals don't. No one in particular, mind you, just trying not to call anybody out. But it's just one of those things that it's I don't know. I think that Our states should want us to be proud of them. I think that our country should want us to be proud of it. And right now that's very difficult because they are going after marginalized communities that have really done a lot to benefit their communities and this country. And it really just isn't necessary. And it's just something that I'm watching very closely what people and entities do and don't do. And, while I may not necessarily have any direct power to influence some of these events, we are watching. I am watching. And what you do will affect what I do in the future. So, something to bear in mind. Maybe you don't care, but, maybe one day your fate might depend on me. And I always kind of live my life with the assumption that, be kind to everybody because you never know whose help you're going to need down the road. It's like you may have all the money in the world, all the insulation in the world, but one day you might find yourself alone in the middle of nowhere, and the only person for miles happens to be me. And if that scenario happens, how do you want that to go? So, just something to think about. Not any kind of implication of any kind of whatever, but just, the person you see on the street. It's like if you say hello and you smile and something, they will remember that. If you say something nasty, they will remember that. And if one day down the road you should need their help or they should need yours, they will remember that. You will remember that. So just something to keep in mind. The golden rule: treat everybody as you would like to be treated. Be kind. Just be kind to people in general because there really is no reason not to be. I mean, there are very few situations in life where an immediate split-second decision needs to be made. And, for most things, it's just like, okay, we may completely disagree on this issue, but there is no reason for us to do anything lethal about it. We can discuss, we can make back and forths, we can, talk about our arguments, we can, there's just really very few problems in this world that cannot be discussed, that cannot be, that need an immediate decision. It's like there's things that, if there's like a visible need, I'm kind of thought to about like computer crimes. It's like before we had computers, we had no laws for computer crimes. Now, of course, when we had computers, people figured out ways to do things with them they weren't supposed to, and as a result, we have laws against computer crime. So, that's the sort of thing that is just like, trans people are not a problem. There really shouldn't be any laws against trans people because we are not creating a problem that requires it. Now, that being said, obviously I'm biased, but it just is also the sort of thing that is just, like legislating, women's reproductive rights and controlling their bodily autonomy in half of the states in the country. It's like that never needed to be legislated. It never needed to be a government issue at all. That never should have been something. I mean, like I've said before, if you're not into abortions, I respect that. If you believe in the sanctity of like all life from the moment it's conceived, I respect that. But at the same token, it's your belief, your decision for you and not for other people. So, you should have no say over what somebody in 2 states over does about what anybody else in your state does. It's like, unless you are in the equation, it's not a decision you need to make. And I have a feeling, that's pretty much how it is with trans issues. It's just like, there's no real reason to legislate against trans people because we are not a problem. We're just trying to live our lives as authentically as possible in a way that really doesn't affect or influence anybody else, other than just trying to be the best possible people we can be. There's little more than I can say about that, and I'll probably talk a little bit more on other issues at other times, but I don't want this to become a lecture any more than I already have. But anyway. In writing news right now, thanks to Jay Coates, I am working on a couple of short stories for a potential anthology, which I was not going to be doing originally. I was just working on editing some of my project for the next couple of months. But the deadline is kind of tight, and I kind of got some ideas for it that I want to try and see if I can put together something that is reasonably satisfactory that fits the theme. So that's happening. So, I've got 2 ideas, one one anthro and one feral, and I'm not going to discuss the ideas that I have yet because they're still early in the development stages, and maybe when I get a little further along and I have something close to a completed product, I would be more willing to discuss what they are about. But I think it'll be good. I'm gonna see what I can do, and we'll see how well it turns out. Um, and video news today is probably going to be a lot of, I'm going to do this vlog. Obviously, I might do a signal video. I'm going to do some audio recording, hopefully, for some future videos that I will be working on, and I will try to get the review for When the World Was Young up at last, and get caught up to the scheduled videos that are supposed to be coming out publicly as we roll forward. Um, it's probably about it, although that's probably still going to take up most of the time I have for today. Books I'm reading. I am very close to the end of Open a Channel, Nana Visitor's book. I just have the stories of some of the real world women that she spoke to that have been influenced by Star Trek, and I have to say that it's a book I highly recommend if you are a Star Trek fan. If you want to know, I guess, more about the female perspective and how it relates to Star Trek, how it relates to Hollywood in general, and how that's changed over the years. And it might kind of give you a little bit of an appreciation for some of the things that maybe you didn't think about or took for granted in those periods. And it's just one of those, Star Trek is a franchise that has shown us over the course of 60 years how our media can influence society. And I think it's one of those things that Star Trek has a unique power to do that, and perhaps it may not be the only one, but it's like the stories that we tell affect affect society, affect us, affect how we want to be. And it's also one of those things that's like, it's why I want to see more trans stories, more trans characters, so that people see us, so that people realize who we are, and get used to us. Just we're just people. We're just people that are a little different than maybe what you're used to. But it's like, it's nothing. It's really just something that I think open your mind to the possibilities, as I often say. Um, but I'm also reading Reborn by Jay Coates as well. I've made it a couple of chapters in. I'm taking my time, but once I finish Reborn, as with many, as with all series, the first one is a litmus test for if I will read the other two. If it goes well, then yes. If it doesn't, then we will see. Sometimes it's just a matter of, it's like I need to let time pass before I decide to read another one. It's like, Todd Aldrington's work. I know his first book that I read did not really catch me, but and at the time I just wasn't inclined to really try again. But I mean, some point in the future I may be so inclined. So we will see. It's like never say never, with the exception of a few people that whose work just didn't catch me, and I there's not a lot to say in that regard. But I'm also reading Meeting Dominique by Royce Day, which I think I'm about halfway through. By now I'm in chapter 9. I don't remember how many chapters there is. But, I mean, so far it's been good. Um, as usual, Royce manages to tell different kinds of stories than I would come to expect anywhere else, which I consider a good thing. Um, it's always one of those layers that gets more complex the further in you go. Um, a lot of his stories are kind of just, I mean, I wouldn't say that they're slow, but they're kind of just, I mean, maybe a slow burn would be a good way to put it, because the stories just kind of take their time and bit by bit, develop the characters in the story and the world a little bit at a time. I mean, so far, every once in a while, particularly in most of his books, Royce manages to surprise me. So, I was telling him this morning when I was reading about, Minerva's mom, it was kind of like, huh, well, that's something I definitely didn't see coming. And I probably should have, because when he was commissioning like a YCH, your character here, if you're not familiar with the acronym, um, about characters in like some sort of a kink convention or something. And he had said spots for micros and macros and so on and so forth, wide variety of sizes of creatures in this setting. And it's like, of course, he had a couple of spots for micro characters, and it just didn't occur to me, I guess because I'm just so used to a furry setting where everybody's approximately the same size, within a certain range. And then it was just like, okay, it's kind of reminded me a little bit of Zootopia, where it's like they had like little rodentia, and the subway car that had like the three different size doors. So it's just like the engineering and logistics for different size creatures can really provide an interesting variation. It also kind of reminds me of, if you've seen Beastars, one of the early seasons. The editor of the paper is like a little mouse, and he's jumping up and down on a desk on top of a chair, just trying to express his frustration. Whereas you have all these creatures that are like hundreds of times his size, that are just all kind of cowering in front of him as he's just screaming his head off. And it's just kind of one of those things that size isn't everything, but um, something to think about. One of those things that I'm sure. So far, I will say though that meeting Dominique has been very tricky for me to categorize, because it's just one of those things that when I try and summarize most of the other things, it's like there's something comes to mind, but with meeting Dominique, it kind of seems like it eludes or resists categorization, and perhaps that's a good thing. But as usual, so far I'm enjoying the ride, and we'll see how it is when I get to the end. Um, Video games, just a quick overview here. I played a little Final Fantasy 14 online this week. I managed to get to the point where I got with my original character, because they would only let you play the characters with like the cat ears and the tail or something, whatever that species is. And then I started a new game on a different server, I think, with an actual anthrocat, because they had an anthrocat race, but of course they were pay species, because you always have to pay to be a furry in these games. Apparently, it's like Star Trek, maybe you pay for vacations, and I think Star Wars maybe you pay for the cat race too. It's like, what's up with that? Anyway, whatever. So I've played a little bit of Final Fantasy 14 online, so I got to that part where they first let you go to the other continents, and we'll see how this goes. Haven't played any Final Fantasy VII Remake in a while. I'm very close to the end of Trails of Cold Steel 4. I think I just have the Imperial Fortress left to go. Empyreal. Imperial. Anyway, I think that's how you pronounce it. And when I finish that, I can dive into Trails of Reverie, which I've been looking forward to, because it's been sitting on my pile for a while. And then there's also, of course, the Trails to Daybreak duology, which is the Calvard Republic. So, I'll get to that at some point, and we will see how that goes. But so far, the Trails series have always been fun for me. I've always enjoyed playing them, and I know I've said this before, but it's kind of like a JRPG version of the MCU. With characters coming into different stories and meeting each other and having an opportunity to have like a love fest together, and so on and so forth. So it's a lot of fun. And I'm continuing to play Horizon Zero Dawn, working my way through the series. I finally think I can see the whole map almost. I have a couple of giraffe-like robots that I have to hack their sensors and figure out where I am. But other than that, I finished the Hunter's Lodge like mini errand or whatever they call them, and they had this the Sunhawk, the leader of the Hunter's Lodge, is kind of like, you're an outsider, you're beneath me, So of course it just made me want to show him up all the more. So I continued the plot quest, and at the end he ends up dying, trying to pursue his own personal glory and trying to maintain his exclusionist regime. And after I had gotten back to the hunting lodge, there's a new document for you to read, which was like the historical accounting of the lodge. And as I was looking at this document, it happened to mention, as it was including the details, mentioned that the characters suffered from bowel failure, which is kind of like just one of those hilariously funny like middle fingers to the character in the afterlife, because now it's like literally part of their historical record that he crapped himself after he died. So, that's just, that is just so in line with this series, but I like it. And at least as far as a vlog, it's already been 20 minutes, so I guess that'll be it for now, and I will catch y'all in 2 weeks, hopefully with some good news, or better news.
If you like werewolves, check out my book Blue Moon, available in paperback and ebook on Amazon. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, click the subscribe button and leave a comment below. See you next time.